invite you to settle into a comfortable position. Allow your shoulders to soften. Allow your jaw to relax. And if it feels natural, take a slow, gentle breath. There is nowhere you need to be right now. Nothing you need to solve. Nothing you need to fix. For the next little while, simply listen. And together, we will explore a truth that has quietly shaped nearly every human life. The desire to control, not because we are bad, not because we are selfish, but because we are afraid. Afraid of uncertainty, afraid of loss, afraid of pain, afraid of what might happen if life does not unfold according to our plans. Most people do not wake up in the morning and say to themselves, "I will spend today trying to control everything." And yet, that is often exactly what happens. We try to control how other people see us. We try to control what others think. We try to control outcomes. We try to control the future. Sometimes we even try to control the past by replaying it endlessly in our minds. We revisit old conversations, old mistakes, old regrets, as though thinking about them one more time might somehow change what has already happened. But the past remains where it has always been, beyond our reach. And still, the mind continues its exhausting work, again and again, day after day, year after year. The Buddha observed something remarkable about the human mind. He noticed that much of our suffering does not come directly from life's events. Instead, suffering often comes from our resistance to those events. A storm arrives. We wish it hadn't. Someone leaves. We wish they had stayed. A plan falls apart. We wish reality had followed our expectations. The event itself may be painful, but our struggle against reality often creates a second layer of suffering. A suffering that is entirely optional. Imagine standing in a river. The current flows steadily around you. Now imagine trying to stop the river with your bare hands. You push, you strain, you exhaust yourself. But the river continues flowing exactly as it always has. Life is often like this river, and much of our stress comes from fighting currents that were never meant to obey us. Perhaps there is something in your own life that comes to mind. A situation you wish were different. A relationship you wish you could fix. A future outcome you desperately want to guarantee. Maybe it concerns your health, your finances, your family, your career, or perhaps it is something much quieter. A private worry that visits you when the world becomes silent, especially at night. Night has a curious way of revealing the thoughts we successfully avoid during the day. When the distractions disappear, when the phone is set aside, when the room grows dark, the mind often begins its restless wandering. What if this happens? What if that goes wrong? What if I made the wrong decision? What if things never improve? And before we realize it, we have traveled far from the present moment. Far from the safety of our bed. Far from the reality of what is actually happening right now. A Zen teacher once said, "When walking, walk. When eating, eat. When resting, rest." Simple words, yet surprisingly difficult, because the mind rarely stays where the body is. While eating, we worry. While resting, we plan. While working, we daydream. While sleeping, we replay yesterday. The body exists in the present, but the mind often lives somewhere else. Somewhere in the future, or somewhere in the past. Rarely here, rarely now. And because of this, many people spend their entire lives chasing peace without ever truly experiencing it. They believe peace will arrive when circumstances improve, when problems disappear, when everyone behaves correctly, when the future becomes certain, when every loose end is tied up. But life has never promised such conditions. The truth is that, Uncertainty is not a flaw in life. It is part of life. Always has been. Always will be. The weather changes. The seasons change. People change. Bodies change. Circumstances change. Every moment of existence is movement. Every moment is transformation. Yet the mind often demands permanence from an impermanent world. And when reality refuses to cooperate, frustration appears, then anxiety, then exhaustion. Think about a tree during a storm. The strongest trees are not always the most rigid. Often, they are the ones that bend, the ones that move with the wind, the ones that understand resistance has limits. The rigid branch snaps. The flexible branch survives. Buddhist wisdom teaches something similar. Strength is not always found in control. Sometimes, strength is found in acceptance. Not passive acceptance, not giving up, but accepting reality as it is before deciding how to respond, because we cannot respond wisely to something we refuse to acknowledge. Many people confuse acceptance with surrender, but they are not the same. Surrender says, there is nothing I can do. Acceptance says, this is what is happening. And from that clear understanding, wise action becomes possible. Imagine a sailor crossing the ocean. The sailor cannot control the wind, cannot control the waves, cannot control the weather, but the sailor can adjust the sails, can choose a direction, can respond skillfully. Life works in much the same way. We cannot command reality, but we can learn how to move within it. For a moment, imagine carrying a heavy backpack. Inside are all the things you worry about. Every fear, every uncertainty, every outcome you are trying to control, every unanswered question, every future scenario, every regret, every burden. At first, the weight may not seem noticeable, but after days, weeks, months, years, the load becomes exhausting. And eventually, many people become so accustomed to carrying it that they forget they are carrying it at all. Stress becomes normal. Anxiety becomes familiar. Overthinking becomes a habit. Yet habits can be questioned, and burdens can be set down. The Buddha often encouraged people to observe their thoughts rather than automatically believing them. This is a subtle but powerful shift. Most of us assume every thought deserves our attention, but thoughts are not always facts. A worried mind creates worried stories. An anxious mind predicts anxious futures. A fearful mind imagines fearful outcomes. And when we believe every thought, we become trapped inside the stories the mind creates. But when we learn to observe those thoughts with gentle awareness, something changes. A small space appears. And within that space, freedom begins. You begin to notice, this is a thought, not reality. This is a fear, not a certainty. This is a possibility, not a fact. As you listen tonight, perhaps there is no need to force yourself to let go immediately. Perhaps there is no need to solve every problem before sleep. No need to answer every question. No need to predict every outcome. What if, just for tonight, you allowed uncertainty to exist? What if you allowed life to remain unfinished? What if you gave yourself permission to rest, even without having everything figured out? The moon does not worry about tomorrow. The river does not worry about where it will arrive. The bamboo does not worry about the wind. And perhaps, for this moment, you do not need to worry either. Not because your problems are unimportant, but because your mind deserves rest. Your heart deserves rest. And tomorrow's challenges will still be there tomorrow. As the night grows quieter, imagine yourself standing beside a still lake. The water reflects the moon perfectly. The air is cool. The mountains rest peacefully in the distance. And in your hands, you hold a lantern. Inside that lantern are all the things you have been trying to control. The future, the opinions of others, unanswered questions, old regrets, hidden fears. One by one, you place them into the lantern, and when you are ready, you gently set the lantern upon the water. You do not throw it away. You do not force it to disappear. You simply allow it to drift. Slowly, quietly, peacefully, across the moonlit lake, and as it moves farther away, your shoulders feel lighter, your breathing feels slower, your mind feels softer, because for this moment, you no longer need to carry everything. You no longer need to control everything. You only need to be here, in this breath, in this moment, exactly as you are. Welcome back. As you continue to rest, allow your breathing to become a little slower, a little gentler. There is nothing you need to accomplish right now, nothing you need to prove, nothing you need to figure out. Just listen and allow the words to pass through your mind like soft clouds drifting across a quiet night sky. Tonight, I would like to share an old story, a story that has been told in many forms for centuries. A simple story, yet hidden within it is a wisdom that has comforted countless people during uncertain times. It is the story of a farmer. Long ago, in a small village surrounded by rolling hills and distant mountains, there lived an elderly farmer. His life was simple. He owned a small piece of land, a modest home, and one horse. The horse was important. It helped him work the fields, carry supplies, travel to nearby villages. For the farmer, the horse was not merely an animal. It was an essential part of daily life. One morning, the farmer awoke to discover that the horse was gone. The stable stood empty. The gate had somehow come loose during the night. The horse had wandered away. Word spread quickly through the village. Soon, neighbors arrived. They shook their heads. "What terrible luck," they said. "Without your horse, how will you work your land? What an unfortunate event." The farmer listened quietly. Then he smiled gently and said, "Maybe, nothing more. Just one word, maybe." The neighbors found his response strange. How could he remain calm? How could he not recognize the disaster before him? Surely this was bad news. Surely everyone could see that. But the farmer simply returned to his work. The next morning, something unexpected happened. The missing horse returned, and it did not return alone. Behind it followed 3 beautiful wild horses from the mountains. The villagers gathered again. This time they were excited. "What incredible luck," they exclaimed. "Now, you have 4 horses instead of 1. You are fortunate indeed." Again, the farmer listened quietly. Again, he smiled. And once again he replied, "Maybe." The villagers became even more confused. Yesterday had clearly been bad. Today was clearly good. Why could he not see that? Why did he keep saying maybe? A few days later, the farmer's son attempted to train one of the wild horses. The animal was powerful and unpredictable. As the young man rode, the horse suddenly bucked. The son was thrown to the ground. His leg was badly broken. The villagers returned once more. This time they wore expressions of sympathy. "What terrible luck. Your son may not walk properly for months. What a tragedy." The farmer listened, and once again said, "Maybe. Nothing more. Nothing less. Maybe." Several weeks later, soldiers arrived in the village. A war had begun in a neighboring region. Every young man was ordered to join the army. Families wept as sons were taken away. Many would never return. But when the soldiers came to the farmer's house, they saw his son's injured leg. They left him behind. He was unfit for battle. The villagers gathered again. Now their voices were filled with amazement. What incredible fortune! Your son has been spared. How lucky you are. The farmer smiled gently and replied exactly as he always had. Maybe, at first, this story seems almost too simple. Yet it contains a profound truth, one that most people spend their entire lives forgetting. We do not know what today's events will become tomorrow. We simply do not know. The mind loves certainty, but reality rarely provides it. What appears to be a blessing may later reveal itself as a burden. What appears to be a setback may later become an opportunity. Life unfolds in ways we cannot predict. And often, the suffering we experience comes from pretending we can. Think about your own life. Perhaps there was a moment that once felt like a disaster. A job you lost. A relationship that ended. A door that closed unexpectedly. At the time, it may have seemed unbearable. You may have wondered why it happened. You may have spent countless nights worrying about what would come next. Yet years later, perhaps you see that event differently. Perhaps it led you somewhere you could not have imagined. Perhaps it introduced you to people you never would have met. Perhaps it taught you strength you never knew you possessed. Perhaps it redirected your life towards something better. What once appeared negative became meaningful. Not because the experience itself was pleasant, but because life continued unfolding beyond that moment. Now consider the opposite. Perhaps there was something you desperately wanted. A dream that came true. An opportunity that seemed perfect. A success that felt like the answer to everything. Yet later, it brought complications you never expected. Challenges, responsibilities, unexpected consequences. Again, life revealed itself to be more complex than your first impression. This is why the farmer says, maybe, not because he is indifferent, not because he lacks emotion, but because he understands how little we truly know. One of the greatest sources of anxiety is the belief that we must immediately label every experience. Good, bad, success, failure, fortunate, unfortunate. The mind is always categorizing, always judging, always deciding, but reality is often far more mysterious. Events unfold across months, years, sometimes decades, and what seems obvious today may look entirely different tomorrow. The farmer understands this. That is why he remains calm, not because life is predictable, but because it is not. Buddhist wisdom teaches that suffering often begins when we argue with uncertainty. We want guarantees. We want reassurance. We want certainty about the future. But certainty is a gift life rarely offers. Instead, life offers possibility. And possibility includes both joy and sorrow, gain and loss, success and failure, birth and death, all woven together. All inseparable, like day and night, like the changing seasons. Imagine a traveler walking through a dense forest. At every turn, the path bends. The traveler cannot see what lies ahead. Only the next few steps are visible, yet somehow, the journey continues. The traveler does not need to see the entire road, only the next step, and then the next, and then the next. Life is often the same, yet many of us demand visibility far beyond what is possible. We want to know where every decision will lead. We want to know how every story will end. We want certainty before taking action. But certainty rarely arrives. There is an old Zen saying, let go or be dragged. Simple words, yet deeply challenging. Because the mind believes holding on creates safety, holding on to expectations, holding on to plans, holding on to outcomes, holding on to certainty. But often, the tighter we hold, the more we suffer, like gripping a rope attached to a moving cart. Eventually, the cart moves, whether we are ready or not. And if we refuse to release our grip, we are dragged along the ground, exhausted, bruised, overwhelmed. The farmer's wisdom is not passive. It is practical. He still works his land. He still cares for his family. He still takes action when necessary. But he refuses to become trapped by assumptions about the future. He allows life to reveal itself one day at a time. And because of this, he remains at peace when others panic. Tonight, perhaps there is something in your own life that feels uncertain, something unresolved, something unfinished, a question without an answer, a future you cannot predict, a situation you cannot control. Perhaps your mind has been trying desperately to figure it out, trying to solve it, trying to guarantee a particular outcome. But what if, just for tonight, you allowed yourself to be like the farmer? What if you simply said, maybe things will work out. Maybe they won't. Maybe this challenge contains a lesson. Maybe this ending is secretly a beginning. Maybe life is still unfolding in ways you cannot yet see. You do not need to know everything tonight. You do not need to predict tomorrow. You do not need to force certainty from an uncertain world. You only need this breath, this moment, this quiet evening, this peaceful awareness, and perhaps that is enough. More than enough. Imagine now that you are standing beside the same moonlit lake from before. The water remains calm. The mountains remain still. The moon shines softly overhead. In your hands is another lantern. Inside this lantern are all the future outcomes you have been trying to control, all the answers you have been demanding from life, all the certainty you wish you had. You look at the lantern for a moment, then gently place it upon the water, and once again, you let it drift, not because you no longer care, but because you understand something important. Life is still unfolding. The story is not finished, and perhaps, like the old farmer, you do not yet know whether today's chapter is good or bad. Perhaps it is simply a chapter, and that is enough. Welcome back. As the night continues to deepen around you, allow yourself to become even more comfortable. There is no rush, no destination, no task waiting to be completed. Only this moment, only this breath, only the quiet sound of a voice accompanying you through the darkness. Tonight, we continue our journey by exploring something many people spend their entire lives struggling against, the things they cannot control, not because they are weak, not because they are foolish, but because they are human. From the moment we are born, we begin searching for certainty. As children, we look to our parents. As adults, we look to plans, schedules, goals, predictions, strategies. We want to feel safe, and safety often appears to come from control. If only we could organize everything perfectly. If only we could prevent mistakes. If only we could avoid disappointment. If only we could know exactly what tomorrow will bring. Then perhaps we could finally relax, finally feel secure, finally rest. Yet strangely, the harder many people pursue control, the more anxious they become. Why? Because much of life exists beyond human control. Always has, always will. Consider the weather. For thousands of years, humanity has observed the skies, studied the clouds, measured the winds, predicted the seasons, and despite all our knowledge, a storm still arrives when it wishes. Rain falls, snow falls, the wind changes direction. Nature continues according to its own laws. not ours. Imagine becoming angry at the rain. Imagine shouting at the clouds, demanding sunshine. The effort would be exhausting and ultimately pointless. Yet many people do something similar with life itself. They resist reality, demand certainty, fight change, argue with the inevitable, and then wonder why they feel exhausted. One of the most difficult truths in Buddhism is this: you cannot control other people. You can love them, support them, guide them, encourage them, but you cannot live their lives for them. You cannot think their thoughts. You cannot make their choices. You cannot force them to become who you wish they were. Many hearts have suffered because they forgot this. Parents trying to control their children, partners trying to control each other, friends trying to change friends, each believing that if they just tried harder, worried more, or cared enough, they could shape another person's path. But every human being walks their own journey. And often, peace begins when we finally accept this. Perhaps there is someone in your life right now, someone whose choices concern you, someone you wish would change, someone you wish would understand. Maybe they are making mistakes. Maybe they are struggling. Maybe they are choosing a path you would never choose for yourself. And because you care, your mind keeps returning to them, trying to solve their problems, trying to imagine solutions, trying to rescue them. But there comes a point when love must be separated from control. You can offer wisdom, you can offer compassion, you can offer presence, but you cannot force another person to awaken before they are ready. A Zen master once compared life to a garden. You can plant seeds, you can water them, you can care for the soil, but you cannot pull on a plant to make it grow faster. Doing so only damages it. Growth unfolds in its own time. People often unfold in the same way, each according to their own season, each according to their own lessons, each according to their own journey. Another thing you cannot control is the past. Yet, millions of people spend countless hours attempting exactly that. Not physically, but mentally. They replay old conversations, old mistakes, old opportunities, old wounds, again and again, as though enough thinking might somehow alter what has already happened. But the past is like a mountain behind you. You may look at it, you may learn from it, you may remember it, but you cannot walk backward and rearrange its shape. No amount of regret changes yesterday. No amount of guilt rewrites history. No amount of overthinking creates a different past. This does not mean the past has no value. It does. The past can teach, guide, inform, strengthen. But when the mind becomes trapped there, suffering grows. The Buddha taught that attachment to what has already passed is one of the many ways humans create unnecessary pain. Because reality exists only here, only now, only in this moment. The past survives as memory. The future survives as imagination. But life itself exists in the present. Then there is the future, perhaps humanity's greatest source of anxiety. The future is fascinating because it does not yet exist, and yet many people spend more time living there than in the present moment. They imagine future conversations, future failures, future illnesses, future disappointments, future losses. The mind becomes a storyteller, creating scenes that have never happened and may never happen. Yet the body responds as though they are real. The heart races, the muscles tighten, sleep becomes difficult, peace disappears, all because of events that exist only in imagination. There is a saying, worry is paying interest on a debt you may never owe. How much of life have we sacrificed worrying about futures that never arrived? How many nights have been lost? How many peaceful moments have been abandoned? How many beautiful sunsets have gone unnoticed because the mind was busy preparing for disasters that never happened? The future cannot be controlled, only influenced. There is a difference. You can plant seeds today, but you cannot guarantee tomorrow's harvest. You can act wisely, but you cannot command outcomes. You can prepare, but you cannot eliminate uncertainty. And strangely enough, accepting this reality often creates more peace than endless attempts to escape it. Then there is change, perhaps the most unavoidable aspect of existence. Everything changes, every single thing. The seasons, the weather, the body, relationships, cities, nations, mountains, even stars. Nothing remains exactly as it was. Yet the mind often wishes otherwise. It wants permanence, stability, certainty. It wants beautiful moments to last forever. It wants painful moments to end immediately. But life does not operate according to our preferences. Life moves, always. Imagine standing beside a river. You place your hand into the water. A moment later, entirely different water flows past your fingers. The river appears unchanged, yet it is constantly transforming. Human life is much the same. Every day, we change, even if we do not notice. Every breath changes us. Every experience changes us. Every year changes us. The person you were 10 years ago no longer exists exactly as they once did. Nor will the person you are today exist forever. This includes aging, a reality many people resist. Yet aging is not a mistake. It is not a punishment. It is not something that has gone wrong. It is life expressing itself. Every wrinkle tells a story. Every gray hair speaks of time. Every season of life carries its own beauty. The cherry blossom is beautiful. The ancient oak tree is beautiful. Neither needs to become the other. And finally, there is one reality every human being encounters: mortality. The simple truth that life is temporary. Many people fear this truth, avoid thinking about it, run from it, distract themselves from it. Yet Buddhist wisdom often invites us to contemplate impermanence, not to create fear, but to create appreciation. Because when we remember life is temporary, we begin to value it more deeply. We become more present, more grateful, more awake. The moon outside does not remain full forever. The flowers bloom and fade. The tides rise and fall. The stars themselves are born and eventually disappear. Impermanence is not the exception. It is the rule. And perhaps there is something strangely comforting about that. Because if difficult times are temporary, then so are our worries. So are our fears. So are our sleepless nights. Even this moment will pass, and another will come, then another, then another. As you rest tonight, perhaps you can gently ask yourself, what am I trying to control? Is it another person's choices? The past? The future? Time? Change? Aging? An outcome that has not yet arrived? And if so, can I loosen my grip? Just a little, not forever, just for tonight, just enough to rest, just enough to breathe, just enough to remember that some burdens were never meant to be carried. Imagine once again the moonlit lake. Still, silent, peaceful. The surface reflects the stars above. You stand at the shore holding several lanterns. One lantern contains the opinions of others. Another contains your regrets. Another contains your fears about the future. Another contains your struggle against change. One by one, you place them upon the water, and one by one, they drift away, across the lake, into the moonlight, until only stillness remains. only breathing, only presence, only now. And perhaps for this moment, that is enough. Welcome back. The night has become a little deeper now. The world outside grows quieter. The distractions of the day slowly fade into the distance. And perhaps your mind has begun to soften as well. A little less tense, a little less hurried, a little more willing to simply be. In the previous part, we explored many things that cannot be controlled. The past, the future, other people, change, time, even life itself. At first, this realization may seem unsettling. If so much lies beyond our control, what remains? Where can we find stability? Where can we find peace? Where can we stand when everything around us continues to change? The Buddha offered a simple answer. You may not control the world, but you can learn to master your relationship with it. And that changes everything. Imagine two people standing beneath the same storm. The rain falls equally upon both. The wind blows with the same force. The clouds cover the same sky. Yet their experiences are entirely different. One person becomes angry, resentful, frustrated. The other remains calm, accepting, at peace. The storm is identical. What differs is the mind observing it. This is one of the most important teachings in Buddhist wisdom. Life does not always determine our suffering. Often, our relationship to life determines our suffering. Many people spend years attempting to change external circumstances, and sometimes that is necessary. But few spend the same amount of energy understanding their own minds. Yet the mind is where nearly every experience is filtered. Every joy, every fear, every disappointment, every success, everything passes through the mind. And because of this, the quality of the mind shapes the quality of life. There is an old story about a monk who carried a bowl of water through a crowded village. The villagers tried to distract him. They shouted, laughed, argued, played music, created confusion. But the monk continued walking calmly, never spilling a drop. Later, someone asked him, "How did you remain so focused?" The monk smiled and replied, "I paid attention to the bowl. Simple, yet profound." The monk understood something many people forget. Attention is precious, and where attention goes, life follows. Consider how much of your attention has been spent on things you cannot control. The opinions of strangers, the mistakes of yesterday, imagined futures, old wounds, endless what-ifs, hour after hour, day after day, year after year. The mind becomes scattered, exhausted, pulled in every direction. Yet what if some of that attention returned home? What if it returned to the present moment? What if it returned to your own heart, your own actions, your own awareness? The Buddha often spoke about right effort, not exhausting effort, not anxious effort, not obsessive effort, wise effort, the effort of cultivating what can actually be cultivated: compassion, patience, kindness, awareness, understanding. These qualities remain available regardless of external circumstances, even during difficulty, even during uncertainty, even during loss. Think about a candle burning in a dark room. The candle cannot illuminate the entire world. It cannot remove every shadow. It cannot control the night. Yet it can shine where it stands, and sometimes that is enough. You are much the same. You do not need to solve every problem on earth. You do not need to predict every outcome. You do not need to control every situation. You only need to bring wisdom to this moment, this conversation, this choice, this breath. Many people mistakenly believe peace arrives after everything is resolved, after every problem is solved, after every question is answered. after every uncertainty disappears. But peace rarely arrives that way, because life never stops changing. New challenges emerge, new uncertainties appear, new questions arise. If peace depends upon perfect conditions, peace remains forever out of reach. The wise person discovers peace somewhere else, within. There is a Zen saying, you should sit in meditation for 20 minutes every day. Unless you are too busy, then you should sit for an hour. The meaning is not really about meditation. The meaning is about priorities. When the mind becomes overwhelmed, we often believe we need more activity, more planning, more thinking, more control. But often what we truly need is stillness. A moment to stop running. A moment to stop fixing. A moment to stop chasing. A moment to simply observe. Close your eyes for a moment, if they are not already closed. Notice your breathing. Do not change it. Do not improve it. Simply notice. Air enters. Air leaves. The body breathes by itself, without effort, without planning, without control. Breath after breath, life continues. Even when you stop managing it, even when you stop worrying, even when you stop trying to force everything into place. How much of life has unfolded without your control? Your heartbeat, the growth of your body, the changing of the seasons, the movement of the stars, the rising of the sun, the falling of rain. And yet life continues. The universe continues. Existence continues. Perhaps this realization is not frightening. Perhaps it is liberating, because it means you do not have to carry everything. You were never meant to. One of the greatest freedoms a person can experience is recognizing the difference between responsibility and control. You are responsible for your actions, not the outcome. You are responsible for your intentions, not the reactions of others. You are responsible for planting seeds, not controlling how quickly they grow. This distinction may seem small, but it changes everything. Imagine a gardener. The gardener waters the soil, removes weeds, provides sunlight, cares for the plants. But the gardener does not pull on the leaves, does not shout at the flowers, does not demand growth. The gardener trusts the process. Human life often requires the same wisdom. Take action. Do your best. Then release the outcome. This does not mean becoming passive. It means becoming peaceful. There is a difference. Passivity avoids action. Peaceful action embraces effort without attachment. The peaceful person still works, still loves, still dreams, still creates, still serves, but they no longer demand guarantees from life. And because of this, they suffer less. As you continue listening tonight, perhaps there is one situation in your life that comes to mind. Something difficult, something uncertain, something unresolved. Imagine holding it gently in your hands. Notice how tightly you may have been gripping it. Notice the tension, the worry, the effort. And now imagine loosening your fingers, just slightly, not abandoning it, not ignoring it, simply releasing the need to control every part of it, allowing life some room to breathe, allowing reality to unfold, allowing uncertainty to exist. A calm mind does not come from controlling life. A calm mind comes from trusting yourself to meet life as it arrives. This is an important distinction. Many people seek confidence by trying to predict everything, but true confidence grows when you realize you can handle uncertainty. Not perfectly, not flawlessly, but wisely, patiently, compassionately, one step at a time. Tonight, you do not need every answer. You do not need certainty. You do not need guarantees. You only need this moment, this breath, this awareness, and perhaps that is more than enough. Imagine, once again, the moonlit lake, the same lake from earlier, the same still water, the same silver moon, the same quiet mountains, standing peacefully in the distance. But tonight, there is only one lantern remaining in your hands. Not a lantern filled with fear, not a lantern filled with regret, not a lantern filled with control. This lantern contains awareness, compassion, patience, acceptance, wisdom, the qualities that no storm can take from you, the qualities that remain available regardless of circumstance. You hold the lantern close, and for the first time tonight, you realize something. The peace you have been searching for is not somewhere far away. It has been here, all along, waiting beneath the noise, waiting beneath the fear, waiting beneath the endless need to control. Quiet, patient, unmoving, like the moon reflected upon still water. As you continue resting, allow that realization to settle gently into your heart. You cannot control everything. You were never meant to, but you can cultivate a peaceful mind, and that may be the greatest freedom of all. Now, there is nothing you need to do, nothing you need to achieve, nothing you need to understand. Simply allow yourself to listen. Allow the words to drift through your mind as gently as leaves floating upon still water. The day is ending. Its responsibilities can rest. Its unfinished conversations can wait. Its unanswered questions can remain unanswered for a little while longer. Tonight is not a time for solving. Tonight is a time for resting. Imagine yourself standing beside a quiet lake. It is late in the evening. The world is wrapped in silence. Above you hangs a full moon, large, golden, radiant. Its soft light spills across the surface of the water. The lake is perfectly still. Not a single ripple disturbs its reflection. The mountains in the distance appear ancient and calm. They have stood there for centuries, watching storms come and go, watching seasons change, watching countless lives pass beneath the stars, and yet they remain silent, patient, unmoved. A gentle breeze passes through a nearby bamboo forest. The bamboo bends softly, never resisting, never fighting, simply moving with the wind. And somehow, because it bends, it remains strong. The rigid branch breaks. The flexible branch survives. Perhaps there is wisdom in this. Perhaps peace comes not from resisting life, but from learning to move with it. Take a slow breath, and as you breathe in, imagine drawing in calmness, soft, cool, peaceful. And as you breathe out, imagine releasing tension. No effort required, just breathing, just letting go. Now imagine there is a wooden dock extending into the lake. You walk slowly toward it. Each step feels light, unhurried, safe. The moonlight illuminates the path before you, and in your hands, you carry a lantern, a beautiful lantern, glowing with warm golden light. Its light is gentle, comforting, familiar. This lantern is special. It contains everything you have been carrying, every worry, every fear, every burden, every uncertainty, every outcome you have been trying to control. All of it rests inside, not hidden, not denied, simply acknowledged. You sit quietly at the end of the dock. The water stretches endlessly before you. The stars shimmer overhead, and the lantern rests in your hands, warm, steady, glowing softly in the darkness. For a moment, think about the future, all the things you have worried about, the things that keep returning to your mind, questions without answers, situations without certainty, outcomes you desperately wish to know. Notice them, without judgment, without resistance. Simply notice them. Now imagine placing each one inside the lantern, one by one. A concern about tomorrow, into the lantern. A fear about something that might happen, into the lantern. An unanswered question, into the lantern. A future outcome you cannot control, into the lantern. One by one, slowly, gently, patiently. The lantern grows brighter, not heavier, just brighter, because nothing is being hidden anymore. Nothing is being fought. Nothing is being denied. Everything has been acknowledged. Everything has been seen. The Buddha taught that suffering often begins when we refuse to see reality clearly, when we cling, when we resist, when we demand certainty from an uncertain world. But tonight, there is no need to cling, no need to resist, no need to demand, only a quiet willingness to let things be exactly as they are. You look down at the lantern, and for the first time, you realize something. You do not have to carry it forever. You never did. Very slowly, you place the lantern upon the surface of the lake. The water supports it effortlessly. The lantern floats, perfectly balanced, perfectly safe. Its golden reflection dances across the moonlit water. You release your hands, and the lantern begins to drift, slowly, silently, peacefully, moving farther from the shore, farther from you. Not because you are abandoning your life, not because you are giving up, but because you are releasing the illusion that you must control everything. Watch the lantern drift, farther, 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 until it becomes a small point of light, floating beneath the moon, like a star upon the water. Now notice how your body feels. Perhaps your shoulders feel softer. Perhaps your forehead feels smoother. Perhaps your breathing feels deeper, slower, calmer, more natural. There is nothing to solve right now. Nothing. The future can wait until tomorrow. Tomorrow belongs to tomorrow. Tonight belongs to rest. Imagine now that every thought entering your mind is simply another lantern. A thought arrives. You place it into a lantern and allow it to drift away. A worry appears. Into a lantern. A memory appears. Into a lantern. A fear appears. Into a lantern. An unfinished task appears. Into a lantern. One by one. Without resistance. Without frustration. Without judgment. Each thought floating peacefully across the lake. You do not chase them. You do not hold on to them. You do not push them away. You simply allow them to come and allow them to go, like clouds crossing the night sky, like leaves drifting down a river, like waves rising and falling upon the sea. The moon continues shining, unconcerned, steady, patient, and perhaps there is a lesson in the moon. It does not struggle to illuminate the night. It simply shines. It does not force itself to be brighter. It does not compare itself to the stars. It simply exists, quietly, naturally, exactly as it is. What if you allowed yourself the same kindness? What if you stopped demanding perfection? Stop demanding certainty. Stop demanding complete control. What if, just for tonight, you allowed yourself to be exactly where you are, exactly as you are? The lake remains still. The mountains remain calm. The bamboo continues swaying gently in the breeze. Everything moves according to its nature. Nothing is rushing. Nothing is forcing. Nothing is struggling. Perhaps life itself is whispering a lesson it has been offering all along. Let go, not of caring, but of controlling, not of effort, but of attachment. not of responsibility, but of fear. Take another slow breath. In and out, in and out. Each breath carrying you deeper into stillness, deeper into quiet, deeper into rest. The lanterns are now distant. Tiny golden lights floating across the vast moonlit lake. You can barely see them, and yet something feels lighter, as though a weight has been lifted from your chest, as though your mind has finally been given permission to rest. You no longer need to carry tomorrow. You no longer need to predict every possibility. You no longer need to fight uncertainty. Life will unfold as it always has, one moment at a time, one breath at a time, one day at a time, and whatever comes, you will meet it when it arrives, not tonight, not in your imagination, but when it truly arrives. And until then, you are free to rest. The moon watches over the lake. The stars shimmer softly above. The bamboo whispers in the night breeze, and somewhere in the distance, the final lantern disappears into the darkness. Not lost, simply released. Allow your breathing to become slower now, softer, gentler, heavier, your body resting, your mind quiet, your heart peaceful. Nothing to control, nothing to fix, nothing to fear. Only this moment, only this breath, only this stillness. And as sleep begins to draw closer, remember these simple words. You cannot control everything. You were never meant to. But you can choose peace. You can choose acceptance. You can choose to let go. Rest now. The night is quiet. The lake is calm. The lantern has drifted away. And you are safe. Very safe. Exactly where you are. The night grows deeper now. The lake behind us has become quiet once again. The lanterns have drifted beyond sight. The moon remains suspended above the still water, and perhaps, somewhere within you, a small space has opened. A space that was previously crowded by worry, crowded by plans, crowded by questions. Tonight, let us fill that space not with answers, but with stories. Simple stories, ancient stories, stories that have traveled through generations of monks, teachers, travelers, and seekers. Stories that remind us that wisdom is often hidden inside ordinary moments. And sometimes, the lessons we need most arrive in the gentlest way. The cup that was already full. Many years ago, a respected professor traveled a great distance to visit a Zen master. The professor had spent decades studying philosophy, religion, psychology, and human behavior. He had read countless books, attended prestigious universities, earned the admiration of many people. Yet despite all his knowledge, something remained unsettled within him. He wanted peace, so he sought out the master. When he arrived, the master welcomed him warmly. The two sat together inside a small wooden room. The professor immediately began speaking. He shared his theories, his opinions, his questions, his conclusions, his beliefs about life, his beliefs about happiness, his beliefs about enlightenment. The words poured out endlessly, and throughout it all, the master simply listened, quietly, patiently, without interruption. Eventually, the master prepared tea. He lifted a small teapot and began pouring tea into the professor's cup. The cup slowly filled, then reached the top. But the master continued pouring. Tea spilled over the edge, onto the table, onto the floor. Still he continued pouring. The professor finally jumped up. "Stop," he exclaimed. "The cup is already full." The master smiled and gently replied, "Exactly." The room became silent. The professor suddenly understood. How could he receive anything new when his mind was already full? Full of opinions, full of assumptions, full of certainty, full of control. Many people move through life carrying a full cup. They fill it with expectations, plans, predictions, judgments, fears. Then wonder why peace cannot enter, wonder why life feels heavy, wonder why wisdom feels distant. Perhaps letting go is not always about releasing possessions, or relationships, or circumstances. Sometimes it means emptying the cup, making space, making room, allowing reality to teach us something new. Tonight, ask yourself gently, what fills my cup? What thoughts have I been carrying for so long that they now feel like part of me? What assumptions prevent me from seeing life clearly? And what might happen if I loosened my grip, just a little? The two monks and the woman by the river. One day, two monks were traveling together. The path led them through forests, villages, and mountains. For many hours they walked in peaceful silence, until they reached a river. The river was swollen from recent rain. Its current moved quickly. The water was deep and difficult to cross. Standing near the riverbank was a young woman. She appeared worried, anxious, unsure what to do. She needed to cross, but she was afraid. The older monk approached her kindly. Without hesitation, he lifted her into his arms. He carried her across the river, set her down safely on the opposite bank, and continued walking. The woman thanked him and went on her way. The younger monk said nothing, but as they continued their journey, his mind became increasingly disturbed. Hours passed. Still, he remained silent. Finally, unable to contain himself any longer, he spoke. "Master," he said, "we are monks. We are not supposed to touch women. Why did you carry her?" The older monk looked at him calmly, then smiled, and replied, "I set her down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" The younger monk fell silent, because he understood. The burden was never the woman. The burden was the thought, the attachment, the inability to let go. How many things are we still carrying? Arguments that ended years ago, mistakes that no longer exist, embarrassing moments nobody else remembers, old disappointments, old resentments, old fears. The event itself may have passed long ago, yet the mind continues carrying it. Day after day, month after month, year after year. Perhaps the question is not, what happened to me? Perhaps the question is, what am I still carrying? And even more importantly, what would happen if I finally set it down? Tonight, imagine placing every old burden beside the river, one by one. You do not need them anymore. You have carried them far enough. The empty boat. There was once a man rowing across a lake. The morning was peaceful, the water calm, the sky clear. Everything felt perfect. As he rowed through the mist, he suddenly noticed another boat drifting toward him. The boat appeared to be on a collision course. Immediately, frustration arose. "Watch where you're going," he shouted. The boat continued drifting closer. His irritation grew. "Move your boat," he yelled again. Still the boat continued approaching. His anger became intense, until finally the boats collided. With a loud thud, the man stood up, furious, ready to confront the careless rower. But when he looked inside the other boat, nobody was there. The boat was empty. Instantly, his anger vanished. There was nobody to blame, nobody to argue with, nobody to fight, only an empty boat. The Zen masters loved this story because much of our anger works exactly the same way. We imagine intention where none exists. We assume people are attacking us, ignoring us, disrespecting us, judging us. Yet often, they are simply acting from their own confusion, their own pain, their own fears, their own struggles. The mind creates enemies, the heart creates stories, and then we suffer because of stories that may not even be true. What if the next time someone upset you, you remembered the empty boat? What if you paused before reacting, paused before assuming, paused before creating another story? Perhaps you would discover a little more peace. The falling leaf. As autumn arrived, a young monk sat beneath an ancient tree. For hours he watched the leaves drifting gently to the ground, one by one. Without resistance, without fear, without hesitation, the monk asked his teacher, "Why do the leaves fall so peacefully?" The teacher replied, "Because they trust the tree." The student was confused. The teacher continued, "The leaf does not cling to the branch forever. It knows its season has ended. It knows another season will come. So it lets go." The student sat quietly, watching the leaves, watching them surrender to the wind, watching them trust the process of life. And suddenly, he understood. The leaves were not falling because they were weak. They were falling because they were ready, because nature itself was teaching a lesson humans often forget. Everything has its season, every beginning, every ending, every joy, every sorrow, every arrival, every departure. Life is not asking us to hold on forever. Life is asking us to participate, to experience, to appreciate, and eventually, to let go. As you listen tonight, imagine a single golden leaf drifting through the moonlight, slowly, gracefully, effortlessly. The leaf does not fight the wind. It dances with it, and perhaps you can do the same, not fighting every change, not resisting every uncertainty, not demanding every answer, simply trusting the journey. One breath at a time, one step at a time, one season at a time. The moon remains above the lake. The bamboo continues swaying softly. The lanterns have long disappeared into the distance. And somewhere within your heart, perhaps another burden has become lighter, another worry released, another fear softened, another attachment loosened. For now, simply rest. Let the stories settle. Let the lessons settle. Let the night hold you gently. And as sleep draws nearer, remember, the cup can be emptied. The burden can be set down. The boat may be empty. And like the falling leaf, you, too, can learn to let go. The night has become very quiet now. The kind of quiet that only arrives when most of the world has fallen asleep. The lake rests beneath the moon. The mountains remain still. The bamboo whispers softly in the distance. And perhaps your mind, too, has begun to settle. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. Enough to listen, enough to rest, enough to hear something deeper than the noise of everyday life. Fear. Every human being knows this feeling. It arrives in many forms. Sometimes it appears as anxiety, sometimes as worry, sometimes as overthinking, sometimes as a tightness in the chest that has no clear explanation, sometimes as a restless mind that refuses to sleep. Fear is not your enemy. The Buddha never taught that fear should be hated. Fear exists because the mind wants to protect itself, because the mind wants safety, because the mind wants certainty. The problem is not fear itself. The problem begins when fear takes control of our lives, when fear becomes the lens through which we see everything. Imagine walking through a forest at night. The path ahead is dark. You cannot see very far, only a few steps. Immediately, the mind begins creating possibilities. What if I get lost? What if something happens? What if danger waits ahead? Yet notice something interesting. The fear is not coming from reality. The fear is coming from imagination. The mind is creating stories about what might happen, and then reacting to those stories as if they were already true. How often does this happen in daily life? You receive a message, and someone does not reply. The mind creates a story. A mistake happens at work. The mind creates a story. Someone seems distant. The mind creates a story. A small uncertainty appears. The mind creates 10 more. Most suffering begins this way, not with reality, but with imagination. Not with what is happening, but with what might happen. There is an old saying, the mind is a wonderful servant but a terrible master. When guided wisely, the mind becomes a powerful tool. When left unchecked, it becomes a factory of endless worry, producing fears, predictions, catastrophes, again and again. A young monk once asked his teacher, "Master, how can I stop fearing the future?" The teacher smiled, then pointed toward the moon. The student looked confused. "What does the moon have to do with fear?" he asked. The teacher replied, "The moon shines only where it is. It does not shine on tomorrow. It does not shine on yesterday. It shines here, now." The student remained silent, and slowly he understood. Fear often lives in tomorrow. Peace often lives in today. The mind travels endlessly, but life itself exists only in the present moment. This breath, this heartbeat, this quiet night. Think about all the futures you have feared throughout your life. How many actually happened? How many unfolded exactly as your mind predicted? Very few, perhaps none at all. The future almost never arrives in the form we imagine. Yet we spend years suffering over imagined versions of it. Years. Entire years. Lost to possibilities that never become reality. The Buddha once taught that worrying is like being struck by 2 arrows. The first arrow is unavoidable. Life happens. Loss happens. Disappointment happens. Pain happens. The second arrow is optional. The second arrow is the suffering created by our resistance, the endless mental struggle, the endless replaying, the endless fear, the endless what if. Life may occasionally shoot the first arrow, but many people spend years shooting themselves with the second. Again, and again, and again. Imagine carrying a backpack filled with stones. Each stone represents a fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of loss, fear of aging, fear of uncertainty, fear of not being enough, fear of the unknown. At first, the backpack seems manageable, but over time it becomes heavier and heavier and heavier, until walking itself becomes exhausting. One day a monk noticed a traveler carrying such a burden. The traveler complained constantly about life, about people, about uncertainty, about everything he feared. The monk listened patiently, then asked a simple question. "Why do you keep carrying those stones?" The traveler looked confused. "Because they are mine," he replied. The monk smiled. "Only because you refuse to put them down." Sometimes wisdom arrives in a single sentence. Only because you refuse to put them down. How many fears have become familiar simply because you have carried them for so long? How many worries have become habits? How many burdens have become part of your identity? Perhaps you are not carrying them because they are necessary. Perhaps you are carrying them because you forgot you could set them down. Trusting life does not mean believing that nothing difficult will happen. Difficult things happen. Every human life contains challenges, loss, heartbreak, change, uncertainty. Trusting life means believing that you can meet those challenges when they arrive, not before, not in your imagination, not tonight, but when they truly arrive. This is a very different kind of trust. Not trust in circumstances, trust in yourself, trust in your ability to adapt, to learn, to grow, to endure, to heal. Think about your life. You have already survived difficult moments, moments you once believed would break you, moments that felt impossible, moments that seemed too heavy to carry. And yet, here you are, still breathing, still learning, still moving forward. Perhaps you are stronger than your fears suggest. Perhaps you are wiser than your worries admit. Perhaps you have already overcome far more than you realize. The bamboo outside does not fear the wind, not because it knows the future, but because it trusts its flexibility. It trusts its ability to bend. The river does not fear the rocks ahead, not because it knows every turn, but because it trusts its ability to flow. The moon does not fear the coming dawn, not because it controls time, but because it trusts the natural rhythm of existence. And perhaps you, too, can learn this kind of trust. Not trust in certainty, trust in life itself. A quiet trust, a patient trust, a humble trust. The understanding that not everything needs to be controlled, not everything needs to be predicted, not everything needs to be solved tonight. As you lie here now, imagine all your fears gathered before you, not as monsters, not as enemies, simply as frightened travelers, trying to protect you, trying to keep you safe. Thank them, gently, kindly, without anger, without judgment. Then tell them, you may rest now. I do not need to carry all of you tonight. I will meet tomorrow when tomorrow arrives. Watch as they slowly fade into the moonlight, one by one, growing lighter, softer, more distant. The lake remains calm. The stars remain bright. The mountains remain steady. And something inside you begins to remember. You do not need certainty to be at peace. You do not need control to be safe. You do not need every answer to rest. You only need this breath, this moment, this quiet awareness. And perhaps for tonight, that is enough. More than enough. Allow your breathing to slow. Allow your thoughts to drift. Allow the night to carry you. The moon shines softly above the lake. The bamboo bends gently in the wind. The water reflects the stars. And somewhere deep within your heart, a quiet trust begins to grow. Not in the future, not in control, not in certainty, but in life itself. Rest now. You have carried enough for one day. The night is holding you, and for this moment, everything is exactly as it needs to be. And now, we arrive at the final part of our journey. The night has grown quiet, very quiet. The world around you has softened. The day has passed. Its responsibilities are finished. Its conversations have ended. Its worries no longer require your attention. For now, there is only this moment. Take a slow breath, and as you breathe in, feel the coolness of the air. As you breathe out, feel your body sinking a little deeper into comfort, a little deeper into stillness, a little deeper into rest. You have traveled far tonight, not across mountains, not across oceans, but through the landscape of your own mind. You have looked at control, at fear, at uncertainty, at attachment, at the burdens you have carried for so long. And perhaps, somewhere along the way, something began to change. Not dramatically, not all at once, but gently, like ice melting beneath the morning sun. Perhaps you noticed that many of your worries belong to tomorrow, and tomorrow has not yet arrived. Perhaps you noticed that many of your regrets belong to yesterday, and yesterday is already gone. Perhaps you noticed that peace has been waiting patiently in the only place life truly exists. Here, now. Imagine once again the lake. The same lake that has accompanied us throughout this night. The moon still shines above it. The mountains still watch from afar. The bamboo still sways gently in the breeze. Everything remains calm. Everything remains at peace. You stand upon the shore, alone, but not lonely. Quiet, but not empty. Still, but fully alive. The surface of the water reflects the moon so clearly that it is difficult to tell where the sky ends and the lake begins. Above, below, everything appears connected. Everything appears whole. And as you stand there, you realize something. There is one final lantern resting beside you. Only one. This lantern contains everything that remains. Every lingering fear. Every remaining worry. Every unanswered question. Every outcome you have been trying to control. Every burden you have not yet released. Take a moment. Notice its weight. Notice its warmth. Notice how familiar it feels. Perhaps you have carried some of these things for years. Perhaps so long that they feel like part of who you are. But tonight, you are invited to do something different. Not because you must. Not because someone tells you to. But because your heart deserves rest. Slowly, you lift the lantern. The golden light flickers softly inside. Warm, gentle, peaceful. You walk to the edge of the dock. The water beneath the moonlight looks like liquid silver. Still, calm, endless. And then, with complete gentleness, you place the lantern upon the lake. It floats effortlessly, without struggle, without resistance. The water accepts it immediately, supporting its weight, carrying it naturally. And then something remarkable happens. You let go, not of life, not of love, not of hope. You let go of the need to control. You let go of the need to know everything. You let go of the need to predict everything. You let go of the need to carry tomorrow before it arrives. The lantern begins drifting away, slowly, gracefully, without urgency. You watch it move across the water, growing smaller and smaller and smaller, until it becomes nothing more than a tiny golden star floating beneath the moon. And then, even that disappears. The lake remains. The moon remains. The mountains remain. And you remain. Yet somehow, you feel lighter, because the burdens are gone, not solved, not destroyed, simply released. Perhaps this is one of the deepest forms of wisdom, not solving every problem, but learning which problems belong to this moment and which do not. Tonight, there is no need to solve tomorrow. Tonight, there is no need to revisit yesterday. Tonight, there is only rest. The Buddha once compared the human mind to a glass of muddy water. When constantly stirred, it remains cloudy. But when left alone, when allowed to settle, the water naturally becomes clear. You do not force clarity, you allow it. You do not force peace, you allow it. You do not force sleep, you allow it. And perhaps that is what is happening now. The water is settling, the mind is settling, the heart is settling. Notice your breathing, slow, gentle, natural. Notice the weight of your body, supported, safe, comfortable. Notice the quiet space between thoughts. the peaceful moments where nothing needs to happen. The moon continues its journey across the sky. The stars shimmer softly. The bamboo whispers. The lake rests beneath the night. And somewhere deep within yourself, you begin to trust. Not trust that life will always be easy. Not trust that every outcome will go your way. Not trust that uncertainty will disappear. But trust that you can meet life when it arrives. One moment at a time. One breath at a time. One day at a time. The future no longer needs your attention tonight. The past no longer needs your attention tonight. Even your thoughts no longer need your attention tonight. Everything can rest. Everything can soften. Everything can become quiet. Imagine now that you slowly sit beside the lake. The earth beneath you feels warm and steady. The night air feels cool against your skin. The moonlight wraps around the landscape like a gentle blanket. There is nowhere else you need to be. No one else you need to become. Nothing more you need to accomplish. You are enough. In this moment, exactly as you are. The lake remains still. The mountains remain patient. The stars remain bright. And your mind becomes quieter and quieter and quieter until thoughts begin drifting like distant clouds, barely noticeable, barely important, simply passing through. And beneath those thoughts, you discover something that was always there. A quiet presence, a peaceful awareness, a stillness untouched by fear, untouched by uncertainty, untouched by control. The Zen masters sometimes called this the original mind, the mind before worry, the mind before struggle, the mind before fear. Not something you must create, something you remember. And perhaps tonight you are remembering. The night grows deeper, the moon rises higher, the lake becomes even more still. Your breathing slows, your body relaxes, your mind softens. There is nothing left to carry, nothing left to solve, nothing left to control. Only rest, only peace. Only this gentle moment. And as sleep begins to arrive, quietly, naturally, effortlessly, remember these simple words. Let go of what you cannot control. Trust what you cannot yet see. Meet life when it arrives, and rest while it has not. The lantern has drifted away. The lake is calm. The moon is watching. And you are safe. Safe, very peaceful, very still. Good night. Sleep deeply, and may wisdom guide you gently into the quiet embrace of rest.